Well, welcome to the Dating Unsettled show where we dare to date differently. I'm Joy Ofodu. I am a two-round egg freezer. That's right, spreading my legs for science, not once, but twice. And I'm also the host of the podcast. You're here because you have questions about balancing career, dating, etc., and egg freezing. Whether it's your career or your relationship, we're here to answer, here to help, here to support. We're going to spend the next hour breaking down what cryopreservation or egg freezing is and talking about making unconventional dating and fertility decisions. So, we are here to bust myths, not brains. We're going to talk about what the cryopreservation process looks like, what it costs, how to get started, how it feels in the body as someone who went through it not once but twice. I'm happy to talk about it, commiserate, vent. I went through it, so somebody's going to hear me. You know what I'm saying? And we're also going to answer your questions live. This is a live taping of Dating Unsettled. The podcast, the Zoom, however you're joining us, is being recorded. So while your faces won't be shown or broadcast, any questions that you drop into the chat will be read and answered, and I'll keep them anonymous. So don't worry. Please keep all of your microphones off at all times and then drop your questions straight into the chat. I am in partnership with Spring Fertility, and as a past patient of the clinic, I'm so happy to share my experiences, to educate others. When I was getting into freezing, I genuinely found such a vibrant online community that was so helpful. So, of course, you want to go to all medical professionals, and I'm not a doctor. That's why we have a doctor. You want to go to medical professionals with your questions, but it was just great to be in touch with other egg carriers and egg havers who were actively injecting or recovering, buying what they bought, watching what they watched. So I'm really, really happy to share my tips with you. I hope that I can be that same digital community for you. And to that effect, we have a special guest with us today who is much more qualified to answer your scientific questions. This is my personal person, my doctor, Dr. Srini Reddy. So please,
Hi.
Dr. Reddy, hey. Hey, so you did right. When she came out to the show, she knows this is not your mama's podcast. This is hey, talk to us about who you are and how you got into fertility medicine.
Sure thing. Thank you for that lovely intro. My name's Srini Reddy. I'm a doctor practicing in the Bay Area in California, specifically in the East Bay with Spring Fertility. I work in our Oakland and Danville offices if you happen to be in the area. I am double board certified in OBGYN and REI, which is reproductive endocrinology and infertility. That's a mouthful, but really what that means is that I focus on helping patients achieve their reproductive goals, whether that's trying to get pregnant or preserving their fertility for the future in terms of egg freezing or embryo freezing, which we're going to do a deeper dive into today. Yeah, so that's kind of who I am.
That's amazing. Not singular, but double board certified. What does that mean? It means you went to the board twice and they like verified you twice?
If it was 4 exams, but yeah, I means that I did
Oh,
med school, then I did 4 years of OBGYN residency. So I used to like deliver babies and do
oh
surgeries and
my
all of that.
God.
And then I went on to get further training. So I'm subspecialized in infertility. So it just means that I kind of went through multiple phases.
Okay, you are kind of a superhero, period. I know that's absolutely right. Well, you're the expert, and it was really, really good to be in your care. First, y'all, we're gonna just dive into egg freezing 101. All right, make it sound as clinically insane as you need to. But how did all of us get into this room? What the Helion James is cryopreservation? Talk to us about what the process is.
Yeah, cryopreservation simply just means freezing, right? So it just means freezing to save for the future. We can cryopreserve any tissue. We can cryopreserve eggs, we can cryopreserve embryos or sperm even. So we can cryopreserve anything for the future. The idea here is that women are, or people with ovaries are born with a finite amount of eggs. We're born with all the eggs we'll ever have, which is wild. At puberty, that's like 500,000 eggs on average. By the time you get to menopause, like 51-ish, you basically run out of eggs. And so
Hold on. She just said that lightly. So we're born with all the eggs we'll ever have. That's like from you're talking about all the eggs I would ever give, make, any children I would ever have. They would all
all
start from
time.
what was already inside me, which is nuts so balls. And then I think the second part is you mentioned we're gonna end up at menopause with about how many?
You effectively run out of eggs by the time you hit menopause. That's what menopause is.
Eggs are
Yeah,
gone. Okay. So
yeah,
if you started with 500K every month when we are like menstruating, are we losing one a month? Are we losing thousands, hundreds? What's going on?
yeah. Yeah. So, and wilder than we're born with as many eggs as we'll ever have. The most amount of eggs you ever had was when your mom was pregnant with you at 20 weeks. When she was 5 months pregnant, that little baby growing in her belly had 6 million eggs. At birth, that number drops down to like a million. So we're just kind of constantly losing them.
Yeah,
Between
insane.
birth and then puberty, now you're at 500,000. And then between puberty and menopause, you kind of just trickle down. So it's kind of a unique feature of eggs. All other cells in our body, we constantly reproduce and make, right? Like your skin, you're constantly making skin cells. Sperm for men, they make sperm every 3 months. People are making all these different things. Eggs are unique because we're born with a finite number of them, and we have to make them last for our entire reproductive lives.
Yep.
So you basically, by the time you get to menopause, you're going to drop below like 1,000. So effectively, you run out. What happens is it's not a set number of eggs that you like, it's not a set number of eggs that you run through every month for the rest of your life, but it's
Okay.
proportional. So when the thousands of eggs that you have when you're young, you have hundreds of thousands of eggs. These eggs are all dormant and immature. They're little immature eggs that have been waiting for decades to be used. Every month, a group of those eggs wakes up from that dormant sleeping state. One of those eggs will ovulate, and the rest of the eggs that woke up will die off.
Dang. So you don't even ever meet them. They didn't even
That's right.
they didn't even
So
get the chance.
we ovulate one egg every month, but we wake up a group of eggs every month. So we lose a group of eggs every single month, though only one is ever in play. And so when you have a lot of eggs, right? We have thousands of eggs, then the body can afford to be a little reckless and it's going to wake up a bunch of eggs every month and it's going to lose a bunch of eggs every month. But as you get older and that number has started to dwindle and we're closer to menopause, we have a smaller pool of eggs to pull from. So we'll wake up a smaller group of eggs. How many eggs wake up is your follicle count. If you remember, we used to talk about follicle count a lot. Yeah,
Yes,
that
it's
is
coming back
how
now.
many eggs wake up.
You are
Exactly.
genuinely giving America's Next Top Model. Like I have plenty of eggs inside my body, but the eggs I do not, the singular egg, actually, since it's only one a month, the egg I do not call must pack up its things, evacuate its the eggs sit inside of our follicles. So
Mhm.
evacuate its follicle and leave, right? And then the egg that does win gets the CoverGirl contract. We love that. Okay,
Tyra
iconic.
Banks. Just call me Tyra Banks. No
I,
problem.
I will, but love ya. So we head into now. All right, I have a bunch of eggs that have been shedding. I'm kind of getting to, a certain age. Some of the folks that might be listening, or some of the unsettlers are like, haven't had my children yet. I might have children naturally. I might want to go through egg freezing, embryo freezing. When they're at that very, very first portion, like, what is the process with spring fertility? How do they begin this cryopreservation trip? Because I
Yeah.
remember I came into an appointment with you. So
That's
what
true.
happens?
That's true. So yeah, if someone is, noodling on the idea, considering egg freezing, and not all of my patients come in saying gung ho, I'm going to do this. Some people are like, I heard about this. Can you tell me more? Some patients come in saying, I for sure want children, but I'm not ready yet. What do I do? Others say, I don't know if I want kids, but I want options. Everyone kind of comes from a different place. So the first step is just setting up a consult with the doctor. And so for us, that would be, calling our clinic, making an appointment. My consults with all my new patients are scheduled for an hour. So we get an hour when we first meet one-on-one to kind of talk through everything. Every patient who comes through that door is a unique individual with a unique set of priorities. So I really try to get to know who you are, where you're coming from, what life looks like to you, what family looks like to you, what your family building goals are, because I think that I need to understand what your goals are to understand how science and medicine can suit you. So that's kind of where it
Absolutely.
starts.
And that appointment that you're talking about, or like would you call it a baseline? Would you call
It's
it
the
a
new
discovery?
consult, I would say. Yeah, yeah. New
an
patient
in, an
consult.
an intake of sorts. Yes.
Yeah.
So at that new consult, I remember coming in. I was in a relationship slash am in a relationship at the time, with my boyfriend, and I just remember like at the very beginning being like, how do I even broach this to this man that I like have been engaging in like the emails of a lifetime, where I've always wanted to, freeze and out could become possible, where it's like I may or may not need any genetic material from you, but at the very least, let's just get support. And I think on his end, wondering, is this something I want to contribute to, right? Or do I just
Yeah.
kind of want to show up for this process and learn about it? So I do love that, like at the very beginning, nobody's obligated to really give anything. You're not going to walk out of there and they're like, yes, we're holding your DNA. Like,
Mhm.
that's not how the first meeting goes. We walked in, and for anyone who's curious about what that new consult or first consult looks like, you can go to my Instagram, Joy Ofodu. That's JoyOf as in Frank, ODU, and you can see my meeting with Dr. Reddy. I got her on camera. Yes, I
Oh
know.
my
Not
God.
like not like super like, oh, I got you on camera, girl. No, but I got you, kind of breaking down charts to us, showing us ages, percentages. So there's definitely like that material is available in depth. If you want to live it through my eyes, through me and Yvonne's eyes, my boyfriend, then you can see that experience. So we went through that in March. Um, After that process, was when you actually begin to schedule with your patients, right? So if they leave that and they decide, I want to go forward with cryopreservation, of my eggs or of my embryos, what's the next step that happens?
Yeah, so exactly. So the first consult is just education, getting to know you mostly as you'll, yeah, from the YouTube video, is that it's really a big educational touch point where like I just teach you about the process and get you comfortable. If you decide to proceed, then at Spring, you get paired with a patient navigator who's going to be somebody who's kind of like managing all the logistics for you. So they're going to be the ones who get you to sign documents, coordinate any lab work you might need, that type of stuff. And then you get paired with the nurse who's going to be the one who interfaces with you in terms of ordering medications and talking to you about dosages. So you get assigned a care team, a patient navigator, a nurse, and then me, your physician. And especially at Spring, we really try to individualize the care to each patient. So I don't have a set protocol that I know I'm going to do before I meet you until I ultrasound you, until I learn about your medical history, your menstrual cycles, and do your blood work. That I use all of that information to kind of tailor your protocol choices, your treatment protocol to your body. So once we kind of decide we're moving forward, you get and meet your care team. Then we do some blood work just to run some hormone panels and all of that type of stuff. And then we do an ultrasound at the initial visit. That ultrasound lets me visualize your uterus, your ovaries. With egg freezing or embryo freezing, we're primarily looking at the ovaries because we're not so focused on the uterus and carrying the pregnancy today. Though I do still look at it just to make sure there are no surprises and looking for things for the future. But really, we're looking at the ovaries and getting an idea of, hey, what is that follicle count? I was just talking about the monthly egg count. What does that look like? So that you and I can set some expectations on how many eggs we think we'll get. But I also use it to kind of understand and decide what treatment protocol would suit your body the best.
Yes.
From there, we have you reach out when you get your period and kind of get going with the next steps from there. If you're on an IUD and you don't get periods, no big deal. We can work around that, troubleshoot, but we'll figure out a time that makes sense to move forward.
And that appointment is just so educative and illustrative. Y'all, when she said we look inside your ovaries, she's not using x-ray goggles. I need you to understand. She takes a long wand. I wish I had like a comp for like what this thing looks like. Because people are like, what is the practicalities? Like, it all
Don't
sounds
scare
nice.
them though, okay?
I don't want to scare you, but I just like for the girls like me who are like,
Yeah,
I just need, or any egg carriers who are like, someone's getting up in my business. I
yeah.
want you to know it's not painful. Like I'm someone who even has to take like just extra steps and delicacies around this. It's not at all painful. But when you see on TV when they just like spread that like gel when someone's pregnant and just ju over their stomach, that's not what we do with y'all. We're gonna
Mm-mm.
use a wand. This is not it. This is not it. This is just a reference. This is a patient's reference, not a clinical reference. They're gonna use a wand like this big, y'all, and they cover it with like really nice soothing gel. Then they slide it up into your business. And then the most magical thing happens, which is like the screen lights up and you're seeing inside your body. For those of you who are like, okay, I get these all the time. Sorry, just let me geek out for a second. This part was insane. I like, I feel like this was almost low-key like stepping into an adulthood moment of like,
Mhm.
sure, you're an adult when you're 18 or when you're 21, you can do this. But whenever you decide to come into spring or lay down and get an ultrasound, like your first ultrasound for those who haven't given birth. And I know we have like some moms in the group as well, or some parents in the group as well. It's just a crazy first experience. And I'm not gonna lie, it was kind of nice to look inside knowing that like, you know, the beginning of my life is in there, like my genetic material, but there's like nothing else to worry about. Like it was like a nice pressure-free, let's look inside and like let's see what's there. So it's so cool because you can literally see, as she mentioned, the follicle count, like all your little follicles nestled together, and she can start to count them. And so that was just it's just an insane like digital physical coming of age experience. I know for a lot of people it's not that deep, but for me it is. And then after that, y'all, I'm about to walk you through like my personal, like, this is what we actually did step by step to get from that original baseline to the retrieval and to recovery. But I think it's just important to note, like with Spring, for me, I did this locally. And I think like my why is I just wanted somewhere that I could go that was no more than like 20 minutes drive away to do these appointments. It's a couple appointments throughout the process. You don't just see them at the beginning and at the end. You get an incredibly personalized plan. And the reason I felt safe with Spring was because of that attention, because of the patient navigator. I hate making a doctor's appointment. Unsettlers, raise your hand or make some noise or whatever you want to do if you hate an appointment, because I genuinely hate setting it up. But they give you an app, they onboard you to their whole system. And it was just nice to log in. I think the app is called Salve. It could be
Mhm.
something else now.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
we log into the Salve app and like all my appointments are there. All my tests are there. All my blood work is there. The next steps, the resources, video how-tos of how to inject everything as you go along. So that is fantastic. And let's talk about the step by step of what we did. And then you'll catch me up with the right now, which is what's happening inside that tank. Like my eggs are sitting somewhere in a facility and I want to know what's going on. So, my story. So, I first met Spring Fertility in March of 2024. So, I did this kind of intake or new patient consult with Dr. Reddy, first smiling face that I met from Spring, and my first ever ultrasound. My partner came by as well, and we wanted to do genetic testing. So, that's kind of like a side option. It doesn't have to directly impact your egg freezing per se, but we just wanted to know within our blood work, which we did in the same appointment, what are we carriers of? You know, any offspring that we have would be one in two, or one in 100, or one in 265,000, you know, times or percent likely to carry X genetic marker. So we learned about ourselves. I saw some things, again, information that you're just not going to get from your GYN. Like these are not tests that are commonly run. So that was really interesting from the first appointment. I appreciated that I could do that all at once because it's a lot to take on. So
Mhm.
from March to July, I had a very interesting experience in 2024 where I had three baselines. And this is that like start, like, let's get ready. Okay, okay, how about, okay. And then we had a third one. And my experience as a patient here was unusual. It's because, partially because of my career. Like, I had dates. I'm an actor, I'm an entertainer, I'm a CEO, traveling on an airplane once, twice, sometimes three times a month.
I mean,
Sometimes,
you would just casually be like, oh, I have to be on set in Atlanta tomorrow. And I was like, girl, what?
yeah,
I need you
Dr.
here.
Reddy would be like, she'd be like, so Joy, we're just gonna, do a little check. I'd be like, so I'm coming back from Texas, but I will be there in the morning. Yeah, it was just
We
insane.
almost
Or
needed like a shared Google Calendar because you'd have so many moving things, and then I would have, oh my gosh.
we did. It was so nuts. And like you were so like to give you credit for those first three, girl, you were so available. It was really me. Yo, I take this on me. This process is something that I think you can get done in in an ideal world, say 2, 3 months of like scheduling. You come in, you inject for like 11 to 14 days, retrieval, boom, out, recovery 1 to 2 weeks, bye. And you never got to see anybody again. But for me, because I personally had so much scheduling going on, this is the main way my career impacted it. So I think other than that, I had cysts that came up because of medications. So in my first ultrasound, I think we was just chilling. But once I came back for my baseline to really kick things off, I saw that my body, my ovaries had like multiple cysts. So we would
Mhm.
measure these from appointment to appointment. Like, let's see if they're any bigger next month, any smaller next month, or the same size. And the reason this impacts is because, and I learned a lot from Dr. Reddy. You're like, Joy, you a scientist? Yes, I am. If you have cysts that are present at the time when you want to start, they could potentially swallow up the medication that you would be injecting to try to get your follicles to grow at a nice even rate. Like that's just one of the many potential risks of starting at that time. It doesn't make it impossible, but they ran blood work on each of my cysts to see if they were hormone producing. Is
Mhm.
that correct?
That's right.
I'm
That's
like,
right. Good job.
I
Yeah,
didn't
you
even know.
got
I
it.
didn't even know that
So look
cysts
at you.
produce hormones. Did y'all
Yeah.
know that? That your cysts, they're not just gaps or like I imagine them like black holes because they look like black holes on the ultrasound,
Yeah.
but they would produce hormone. And if they're doing that, they can interfere with measurement and growth and everything. So
Mhm.
that just did not meet my personal goals for fertility. Even my follicle count would change month to month because of all of this volatility. And so for me, I just wanted to optimize my start date and my start time. I recommend for anybody, no matter where you go to get your eggs frozen, embryos frozen, just try to find a time where you're local. There's no perfect time to get started. Life will life, your career will career. If you're like, well, I just want to wait till work calms down. If you're listening like that, it ain't gonna calm down. Okay. You're hard at work and you're flourishing. Just find a time when you're local, right? When you're ideally not going to be on a plane every couple of days. So I decided to get off those specific medications during these baselines and just come back 2 to 3 months later. Like I wanted everything to be flushed out of my system. I wanted the cyst to hopefully go away. And that's what led to round one. So I did my
Mhm.
round one in March of 2025. And what they did was we came back in, blood work measurement, baseline. I got a call later that day, which is a very like fateful call. This is now my like fourth call. But for most patients, it'll be your first and only. And they're like, you're good to go. So I answered that call. I got my medications delivered. This was really cool. They used like Alto Pharmacy, which if you're in the Bay Area is like a local deliverer. It'll hit your front doorstep with like ice, dry ice kind of like coming
And
on
a
out of it.
candy. And they give you candy with each
They
shipment.
do. There's like a
That
tiny little
caramel. Yeah. Good stuff.
it's like a little butterscotch that comes with it. They're like, "Welcome. Here's thousands of dollars of medication." And you're like ushering it into your house very privately. It's like the craziest experience. So the meds came to my door, which was awesome. Didn't have to like, go nowhere for those. But I injected what's called Gonal F and Menopur. Can you tell
Mhm.
us what Gonal F and Menopur do?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way your ovaries grow follicles, which are homes for the eggs, the way they mature and grow eggs is that your brain releases hormones and those hormones communicate with your ovaries. So the two main hormones that your brain releases are FSH and LH. And so then during the egg freezing process, the way we get your follicles to grow and your eggs to mature is we give you FSH, LH hormones. So one important thing is that these are hormones that your body is already exposed to. They are not new hormone medication. It is
Yep.
the same FSH LH that your brain produces to talk to your ovaries. We just give it to you in injection form. So Gonal-f and Menopur are FSH and LH hormone medication to try to stimulate the growth of your follicles.
Amaze. And y'all, when I say injections, don't imagine these like gigantic needles. I'm talking about just little prick, little pinglet.
Yeah.
So
If
I
you know
would do
anyone with
that
like diabetes, they're like little insulin needles.
so tiny and so skinny. So
Mhm.
it was crazy to even think that like liquid of that small volume or liquid powder combos could produce that in your body. But y'all, I was out here like Breaking Bad. I'm like flicking needle. It was insane. It was just literally like, why is like I'm allowed to do this, but the nurses has given me instructions. You have your videos, you have access to like it's actually just it's so simple once you do it. But when you first hold that med, it feels crazy. So if you want to see me inject anything, you want to step by step, you can watch my videos on YouTube, Instagram. You can also find some on TikTok, or again, refer to official material, which is actually on Spring Fertility's website, where you can see how to mix and inject these. Please
And
follow advice
then
from. Yeah, a
Spring
professional.
also has a physician on call every single night. So there's a phone number you can call. So at 9 a.m., 9 p.m., 1 a.m., whatever, you have a weird pain or a question about a medication, you can call and talk to a doctor overnight.
And
And
I
those
sure
those
did call
those
that.
numbers, those come to my cell phone, so I know.
Oh, yep. I called that number because even when I would do things right, I just freaked out. And I'm like,
Totally fine.
there's a little bit of da-da-da left in the da-da-da. I turned it to 25. Anyway, so that's so easy. But I visited multiple offices during my first round because of my schedule. It was just so variable. I was in Oakland, I was in Danville, I was in San Francisco, and I got to meet a bunch of spring doctors. I think symptoms for that first round, I had a lot of like fatigue. That was my big thing. People wondering how you feel. I had some fatigue, some soreness, some nausea. It was a lot of go, go, go. So, like I said, my career didn't stop. My auditions didn't stop. My travels didn't even stop. I was on airplanes during both cycles. So it's kind of natural that I would have symptoms, but it wasn't so bad. It wasn't life stopping for me. I was active beforehand, eating right beforehand, with, treats here and there. So that's kind of how I handled it. Then we had leopleuridine and cetratide, these medications that got us to begin to get them up on out of there. We want the eggs to begin to drop the way that they would drop during your period, but we don't want them to fully leave the body. We just want them to get nice and ready. It's
That's right.
really, really interesting how you feel during the process because, again, it kind of feels like nothing is happening. You're like, I'm injecting every day. Oh, okay. And then it feels like everything's happening. But
Yeah.
then I had my retrieval, which was in March, maybe just a week and a half later. I had kind of a tough to predict result, something that like doctors can't see, I can't foresee. And this was tough for me because I think there's a lot of emotions that are attached to egg freezing, and a lot that you like build up, to think is going to come as an outcome of the cycle. I think my number one learning from my first cycle is that like no matter what stats say, no matter what averages say, like you are your own person with your own body and you're going to get a unique result. These doctors are experts. They're going to build a customized plan for you, but still science is science, right? It's not completely perfect yet. And so with that hard to predict result, I then went into my recovery. We retrieved what we could retrieve, and I had a vacation 2 weeks later. I was like, bye. See ya. I was thinking I would like to do this again because I really believe in egg freezing and, I want an optimized result. So I scheduled a round two. So June of 2025, just a short amount of time later, I was back like, hey, how y'all doing? And between that time, what was nice is that the doctors at Spring, they met about my cycle and they all helped to consult on a customized plan. So it was kind of cool that they referred to each other. What we did differently during this cycle was a couple things. One, we primed beforehand. So I took a couple medications that got my body ready to produce like an even, ideally, even number of follicles on both sides. They were so even that during the second cycle, I think, doctor, you said I had kissing ovaries where they
Hmm.
were just so perfectly balanced that they just, oh, we love that. Dating settled.
Yeah.
And so my kissing ovaries, they grew, they populated follicles. I retrieved. Now I'm like, I know the drill, went back into the facility. Retrieval morning is bright and early, y'all. I did it in Oakland. It's bright and early, but it is like also kind of nice because everybody's just there to take care of you. You get
Yeah.
your little socks and your gown, and they put the IV, injection is the worst part of that day. But they put the IV in, now it's in. Seconds later, you're fine. And that flowy stuff starts flowing.
Mhm.
And next thing you know, you're getting wheeled in. And doctor is like, what's your name? What's your birthday? I'm like, Joya. And they're like, okay, can you just lay down for me? Lay down, y'all. I was out cold. I'd never been under anesthesia in my natural born life. It was insane. I can't even tell you it's not you decide to sleep, your body just like you're out like a light. When I woke up, the retrieval was done. So, for anybody who's wondering about the pain, you are getting meds pumped into you, handed to you. Like, I just felt like I was on a cloud. When they say it's the best sleep of your life, it was the best sleep of my life. When Dr. Reddy came bedside to tell me how it went, which she'll give you like preliminary results. What did I look like, Dr. Reddy, when I woke up from my
Well,
surgery?
so the procedure itself is like literally 20 minutes. It's so quick. You fall asleep, you wake up. And before you go back, there's a locker that you can put your stuff inside, but we give the option, like, if you want to keep your cell phone, so when you first wake up, you can text your partner or whatever. And Joy goes, I don't need my cell phone. I just need my camera. And I was like, okay. So she wakes up in post-op and I go to see her and my girl's already blogging. And I was like, oh, I don't know.
I was
I don't know what
vlogging
you're gonna
and
release.
like, yeah, I don't know what you're gonna say. Thank God I wasn't live. I said a lot of things. I watched that video back and I crack up because like in both of them, I'm like crying, you know. I'm just emotional. I'm a wreck. Iman is not there yet, you know. I'm just on my own, and then it's you, you know. And so it was nice that you came in on my second surgery that you performed, and you know talked to me about like what happened.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, let's put that camera down. You know, let me report to you how it went. And so I think the overwhelming feeling that I had after my second retrieval was just gratitude. This process is incredible. Like the fact that science is to this point where we can make our own dating and fertility choices, where, you know, we can prime beforehand and inject during and be seen every other day, and that this can happen inside your body before you're even ready to become pregnant. I think it's just crazy. So that was awesome. Um, I would love to know because we put the eggs away. I got a result that I'm really happy with that gives me a strong likelihood of having at least one child from the
Mhm.
eggs that we retrieved. I would like to know what's going on. So on that day when y'all took the eggs away, where did they go? Where are Joy's eggs now? I mean, don't give them the exact address because people might try to make mini me's like it's a sci-fi drama, but where are the eggs now and what will happen to them over the next couple of years?
Yeah, so your eggs are frozen on site in our clinic. So what happens is when we do your procedure and we extract the eggs, the embryologist is actually in the room with me. So as I extract them, I hand them directly to the embryologist and they look at them under the microscope, identify the eggs. And basically what they do is they rinse the eggs off and then they like kind of let them chill for a bit. And then when eggs come out of the body, they come out surrounded kind of like by a cloud of supporting cells. So that's why when we first do the egg retrieval, I give you a preliminary egg count of how many total eggs we got. After a few hours, we clear off all those supporting cells and then we can see the egg more clearly. That's when we know whether the egg is mature or immature. Mature eggs are capable of fertilization. Those are the ones we freeze. So now we know which of the eggs are mature. The mature eggs, what we do is to freeze the eggs, you dehydrate them. So you get all the water content out of the egg and then you freeze them in liquid nitrogen. So it's rapid freezing and they are frozen at a minus 196 degrees Celsius. So super duper duper cold and they're frozen that day. And then once that egg is frozen, it lives in a liquid nitrogen tank with all your unique identifiers. And it stays like that until you come back to use them. If you come back to use them, the main thing with egg freezing or embryo freezing is that frozen is a stable state. So there's no advantage to using your eggs sooner versus later. If you take those eggs and we thaw them today versus you come back in 10 years, your results with these eggs are the same because once that egg is frozen, it is frozen in time and theoretically you can use it an indefinite amount of time later.
Wow. Now, is my own body more or less capable of holding and harboring that egg, whether I come back next year or in 10 years?
Interestingly, no. So your ovaries are
Wow.
where your eggs come from. Your eggs age. We've talked about that. But your uterus is where what carries the pregnancy. That's the womb. Your uterus does not age. So your uterus is just as capable of holding a pregnancy at 15, 25, 35, or honestly, 55. Like at any age that you
Wow.
come back to use these eggs, your success rate with these eggs is tied to the age that the eggs were frozen, not the age you are when you come back to use them. Yeah. So this is crazy, but we can actually take someone that's menopausal and get them pregnant if we use young eggs because the age limiting factor here, wild, is the eggs. Yeah.
Yeah, for those of you who are listening and not watching us, just know I just grabbed my head to like steady it, like literally mind blown because this kind of goes against everything we hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was it. And that was my process. The recovery for me, y'all, I think my second recovery was tougher than my first recovery. Like first one I was like in out. Like I said, I was literally on ATVs in where was I? Mexico? Yeah, I think I was on ATV somewhere in the Bahamas or Mexico. By the first one. The second one, I took a little bit more time to get back into my body because now they've done poked up in there, twice within the same season. I had to recover my strength as someone who's like really active. I like going to the gym. My heart rate was like just much higher and I wasn't able to like hit my cardio, hit my strength as soon as I, had prior to all of this if I was out of the gym. So it was just an interesting experience of like coming back into my body, coming back into my faculties. And when they say like, okay, well, when will you feel normal after all is said and done? I would say maybe a month later did I feel like, my stomach had reset, my bowel movements, constipation is really tough after the anesthesia and after
Yeah.
the process. But it was nice to be done and have that feeling of whenever my partner and I or I decide to come back and do this, boom. Okay, quick question before we dive into kind of the dating element of this. I
Yeah.
wonder what would happen for a person if they decide that they want to freeze embryos and not just their oocytes or eggs?
Yeah, so if someone has a sperm source that they've already chosen, a partner, or they want to use donor sperm, whatever,
Everybody
including
go home and refer to your partner as a sperm source. Okay, sorry, continue. That's that's just really funny to me. Like how you instead of how you guys do it, just be like how you sperm source is doing. Okay, sorry, keep going, keep going.
This is how you know I've been in school way, way too long.
No,
So
it's good. You're giving medical terms. I'm just misappropriating them for my comedy purposes.
I love it. I love it. But if you decide to make embryos, from your point of view, it's the process is actually the exact same. The medications are the same, the appointments are the same, the surgical procedure is the same. The main way that it's different is that on the day that we do your egg retrieval and we get eggs from you, your partner would come give us a fresh sperm sample. So I have fresh eggs, fresh sperm. We put them together in the lab and we grow them for a week into embryos that we can then genetically test and buy and freeze.
Nice. And so in terms of like dating during this, I like people ask me all the time, do you need to be partnered? Like, do you need to be with someone? Do you have to have a partner? Can I do this alone? The answer is no. Y'all, dating unsettled, since the beginning of time has always been about making the decisions that work for us, regardless of whether or not a sperm source, man, partner, etc., is present. And so this is one of those blissful things that if you're like, okay, I'm 27, I'm 32, I'm 36, I'm 24, I don't have anybody in my life. This is still for you. It's very much for you. It's something that you can do for yourself, not for anyone else. So I would say the only pro is that being in a relationship during this, I did have the kind of, private, intimate, emotional support from my
Mhm.
partner. And that was really nice. If you're in a relationship and you're considering this, but you're like, okay, he's not trying to have kids right now. Like, is this going to freak him out? I'm not saying test your man. I'm just saying this is an interesting emotional support experience. Like
Yeah.
he came by and really helped me through surgery, recovery. He
Yeah.
drove me to and from my appointment. The monitoring and the in between, I could handle myself. It was me
Sure.
driving, to and from the facility to see Dr. Reddy on a weekly basis. But it was kind of nice to just have somebody there. But y'all, I also had my family. I also had my friends checking in on me, texting me, FaceTiming me, asking me how it was going. So if you're someone who's like, I want to do this, but I feel like I just don't have that person. How can I proceed? Lean on your family if you can, lean on your
Mhm.
friends if you can. And then also know, like, even in the Bay Area, there are companies of nurses that will help come by and do the injections in home. I had one in home visit on my second round just to see what it was like. And I'm like, okay, she kind of did what I would do for myself, So it was an affirmation for me that I'm doing it right. But if you just need that person to measure out your meds for you, inject, if you have the affordability, like that's available too. And I think for me, this was a very interesting, unsettling tradition disruptor because if you're a Nigerian American, if you're African American, like normally you think about family planning as something that is done with a partner and you don't talk about what's happening in your ovaries, in your uterus, your cysts. It's very, keep it hush hush till it's all finished. So for me to be getting on Instagram and, actively sharing, going through my appointments and, I did have boundaries for myself. I was like, okay, I don't really want to show my exact ultrasound, image to anybody, but I'll show the corner so people know just like textures to expect. Or I would show myself not during the appointments when the doctors were speaking to me, but afterward, after they'd be like, okay, please put on your pants and everything. I would just be in the corner like, okay, y'all, Dr. Reddy just left. She said this is this. Okay, see you later. Bye. So
I had no
just
idea
know
you
that
could
like
do that.
oh yeah, that's why it took so long to come up out the room every time. Is I was recording with that my camera that you saw, my little pocket three of me. We was friends. I would just pull it out of that same bin where you say put your undies. I would
Yeah.
pull it out and I would report what's happening. So that's what y'all are gonna see on YouTube. But it was nice to create digital community. Like I know I can't go to my Nigerian aunt or uncle necessarily and have, if they're not medical professionals, and have an in-depth conversation about this that's going to be comfortable. Sure. But I did find forums and subs and folks who were open to talking about this because they were also going through it. So I think just, in this day and age, y'all know that things are changing. People are more open to speaking about it. Is it awkward to bring up egg freezing on a date? Some people have varying opinions on this. I say maybe not first date convo. If you're an unsettler and you're still on the market, I personally just recommend bringing this up later as like, hey, this is something I've decided to take on for myself that allows me to be a little bit more flexible with family planning. And that is my why, y'all. Like, yes, I do want to get pregnant naturally. I do want to have kids naturally and probably still will. I'm in my late 20s and I do have time to do that. This did not negatively impact my natural fertility, nor
Oh,
was it indicative of what I can do naturally. So I know
right.
that I'm a superhero and my body is still full of those eggs that she said I'm running out of. Um, my body still is capable of pregnancy. So it's my why was just that I think this process is fascinating. I wanted to go through it. I want that sense of no matter what happens in my current relationship, I'm with a partner that I love, that I've been with for years, sure, we're on that track, sure. But no matter what happens, I'll always have this for me. And so that was my big kind of why and my decision. It's not, I want to Nick Cannon populate the world with 20 plus, 30 plus kids. It's, I would like to have a few. And even if after my first natural kid, as I mentioned, I know there's like some moms here, even after my first natural child, if anything happens to me, medication change, body
Mhm.
change, a natural disaster, whatever it might be, act of God, that would prevent me or make it really difficult for me to carry or for me to naturally conceive, I have these eggs, and
Yeah.
there is a possibility, a likelihood. So that's what does it for me. How do you see patients navigating, whether they're single? Do you see them coming in partnerships, marriages, relationships? What's been your experience of your patients?
I mean, we have patients come with in all walks of life. So they come partnered, they come unpartnered. Some I've also had patients that I've taken care of whose relationship status has changed while I've known them. So I meet them and they're single, dating, whatever, and we talk about egg freezing. We do a round of egg freezing, and then they come back like 6 months later and they're like, actually, I'm like, we're actually pretty serious. We were dating when I was doing the egg freezing thing, wasn't really ready to make that kind of commitment, but now we're kind of trending that direction. Can he come meet
Mm.
you? And so then they'll bring the partner in and I'll meet them and talk to them about embryo freezing. And I've kind of had patients kind of make that progression. Um, yeah, you get kind of patients with all sorts of different priorities and values. Some desperately want children at some point. Some people want it in the near future, distant future. Some people have no idea. Maybe one partner wants something, the other partner doesn't. So they're just trying to keep options open.
Mm.
Um, yeah, definitely kind of see patients navigated in all different kinds of ways. The other thing is, they freeze eggs and then, I've also known patients who then years later come back and they're like, I met somebody, we're engaged, we're getting married, but I'm 42 now, so I know that it may be really tough to do this on my own. Can we turn these eggs into embryos so that I actually have a patient I just talked to like 30 minutes before this, was getting married in November
Mm.
and she wants things lined up so that right afterwards we can hopefully move forward with an embryo transfer. She froze eggs with Spring years ago, met her dude, and
Whoa,
now we're gonna build her family. So,
insane.
different journeys for everybody.
Yeah, you could turn lemons into lemonade, eggs into embryos.
There we go.
That is so cool. Within technology, how safe is this process? Like, how reliable is it? Is it safe for the human body, one? And then how reliable is it in producing children?
Yeah. So In terms of safety, um, there are the risks in terms of the procedural risks, right? So it's a surgery. Like any other surgery, it's going to have risks of bleeding or infection or hyperstimulation. There are risks associated with it. These risks are quite infrequent and rare, less than 1% of the time. We rarely have complications happen, but it is an elective process. So I always make sure all patients are educated on procedural risks like that. And then in terms of reliability, that's its own risk, right? When we freeze eggs, we are freezing potential. We don't know what that egg will do in the future. That egg needs to go through so many steps to result in a baby in the future. So these frozen eggs have to thaw, fertilize, grow into embryos, pass genetic testing, and then implant. They have to do all these steps. And at any point, we can have pitfalls. So I always caution patients that with egg freezing, even if you're somebody who gets a bunch of eggs, which is great, it's never a guarantee. I want to reassure you that it is safe and that it can be reliable, but there are always outliers. And so really importantly, Spring likes to be really, really transparent with our data. And so on our website, we have something called an egg calculator. And what the way to understand that data is if you enter into that calculator how many eggs you have frozen and at what age you froze the eggs, not the age you come back to use them, but the age you froze them, it will show you our internal data. 7,500 eggs that people have frozen at Spring and used to get pregnant themselves. So we have lots of data for all patient ages. You can
Wow.
put those two numbers in there and it will tell you what percentage probability you have of having a child from these eggs. Even if you have 100 eggs frozen, it will never say 100% because there's no guarantees, but it will get pretty damn close. So
Nice.
the reliability of freezing your eggs, barring outliers, is that yes, we can do a lot. And so I think it's important to choose a clinic that is transparent with their outcomes so that you know it's important to have trust in your doctor and your clinic through this process because
Yes.
that egg has to go through so much in the future and we don't know how they're going to do. So you have to have so much trust in that outcome, that hypothetical outcome in the future. So this is why I think data is so helpful.
And realistically, with like my results, right? I know that I landed somewhere where I have a very strong likelihood of having one natural or one birth
Mhm.
from these eggs that we gathered. I also have a relatively strong likelihood of two potential from the eggs we gathered. Um, is it true that the older you are, you need to freeze more eggs?
Yeah, because reproduction inefficiency goes up as we get older, meaning that as we get older, the total number of eggs we have is decreasing. We touched on that, but the quality of our eggs is changing as we get older. And that's the main
Hmm.
reason people freeze their eggs is that our egg quality goes down as we get older. So to get the same outcome, so if the outcome is one healthy embryo, the number of eggs it takes to end up with one healthy embryo requires less eggs when you're younger because your eggs are higher quality. So it takes less of them to get to that outcome. Whereas when you're older, our egg quality has gone down. And so now you need a much larger number of eggs to get to that same outcome because the eggs have lost their efficiency with that egg quality loss. And so to get more eggs in the future, it may require more rounds of IVF. And that's kind of where egg freezing is helpful because when you're younger, you can get the outcome you need in less attempts, and potentially you may need more attempts later. That's kind of where it goes.
Nice. Fascinating. Dr. Reddy, you are taking us on a ride and we appreciate it because I relearn every time I have these convos. For
Yeah.
unsettlers who are listening either live or if you're listening to this later, this is the questions moment. So prep your questions, drop your questions. You can privately DM me your questions if you don't want to see them in the Zoom chat. But please feel free to put them in the chat. It's a relatively safe space. There are no bad questions. If we've already touched on it, we're happy to remind you of it again. And it's probably also on the Spring website. So there are great FAQs available. But now's the time to take your questions into the chat. I do have some questions from social media, things that folks asked across my various posts. So we're going to ask those while we sit in anticipation of your live questions or from our social media questions. I want to ask Dr. Reddy, what are the ballpark costs to doing this process, let's say one time for egg cryopreservation? And what are the annual rough costs of keeping these on ice?
So the rough costs, there's two kind of costs with egg freezing. One is going to be the cost to your clinic for all of the treatment they do for you. And then two is going to be a cost to the pharmacy for the medications. And so typically it's roughly around 10,000-ish dollars to pay Spring to freeze your eggs for one round of egg freezing. And then it's somewhere between $3,000 to $5,000 for medications to go along with that. So you're looking at all in about $13,000 to $15,000 for one round of egg freezing. Really great at Spring, that's pretty unique, I would say, is that we do have a payment plan for egg freezers. And so it's a payment plan spread across 2 years, I think 24 months, and it's just equally doled out. And so you can just pay 300-ish dollars per month for 2 years with no interest and no down payment to cover that cost, just because we do know that many of our egg freezing patients are young and that's a big financial burden. So we want to help you out there. And then the ongoing cost is going to be the ongoing cost of storage. I believe the first 6 or 12 months, I can't remember which one, is included of storage is included in your initial fee. And then after that initial time period, then every year they will hit you up for to re-up your storage payment. That's
Yes,
roughly
they
around a thousand
will.
dollars, I believe.
Yep. Yeah, I think it was not is 905 or 950. To be very frank with you and how I handle money, y'all, you know I'm transparent. I don't want to think about it. Unsettlers, I don't want to think about it. It's not a cute number, it's not a small number. Like I would just say what it is. But to me, it's a valuable number. Like
Mhm.
this is something that whenever I get an email about it or I see it, I'm just reminded like this is the investment I'm making in securing my future. When I think about my desire to be a mom and what's in my control, what's outside of my control. There's almost no number I wouldn't pay.
Yeah.
But for me, this was really extremely personalized quality care. And knowing that my oocytes are safe somewhere in a dish with Spring, and that means not a guarantee, but a strong likelihood that we would
Mhm.
be able to reactivate those, to me gives me like all the peace in the world. So it's an investment I made. Y'all know, unsettlers, I'm not going to come tell you or show you an investment if I don't think it's worth it. I think this was incredibly worth the process. Even if I never use them, I will still be really grateful to have gone through it. Okay, we're going to do some rapid fire now to kind of close this out here. Shortest answers possible, doctor.
Got it.
Here we go.
Locked in.
One, once frozen, how do I use these someday? So I come back to you next year. I'm like, we're ready. What happens?
So you don't have to use them, but if you do choose to use them, you come back, see the doctor again, get established, make sure we would do like a semen analysis, make sure we've got enough sperm, all of that type of stuff. And then we thaw the eggs, put them with sperm, create embryos, genetically test them, and then transfer those embryos back into you to get pregnant. The hard part for sure is the egg freezing aspect of this. Egg freezing is just the first half of IVF. So then we're just going to do the second half of IVF when you want to use the eggs.
Does egg freezing hurt?
So I think we touched on some of the symptoms you were having. Egg freezing itself doesn't necessarily hurt. There are symptoms associated with it. It's usually 2 weeks of medications. First week of medications, you don't typically feel a whole lot. Second week of medication is when you can expect bloating, fatigue, constipation, that type of stuff, pelvic fullness. With the egg retrieval process, which is the surgical procedure to retrieve the eggs, you can expect cramping pain and honestly more bloating and more constipation. So it's less pain and more it's uncomfy, and you're going to want to wear stretchy pants.
Definitely. When does your body return to normal after egg freezing? So when does everything cycle about your system?
Every person is going to be so different. And even from cycle 1 to cycle 2 for joy, it was so different. And so some patients feel very little, and some patients take a little longer to bounce back. Hormone wise, it's out of your system in a few days. So you'll get a period, typically 1 to 2 weeks after your egg retrieval. That period is really going to be your hormones fully resetting. So you really should be back to baseline there. But there are going to be smaller, more nuanced symptoms changes, and especially if you're attuned to your body specifically, that are going to vary from person to person.
Does every follicle that we see on those ultrasounds, your AFC or throughout the process,
Mhm.
does every follicle contain an egg, a mature egg?
Every follicle contains up to one egg. When your follicle is teeny tiny, the egg is immature. When your follicle grows nice and big and juicy, that's when we think the egg is mature. There are the majority of the time, every follicle contains one egg, maybe 5 to 15% of the time, maybe it doesn't.
About how many baseline appointments could we expect throughout the process where we got to come back and see you?
So we do an ultrasound at the very first initial consult just to get a lay of the land, understand your anatomy, understand your ovarian reserve. And then once we start the actual IVF process, you can expect in the 2 weeks that you're doing medication, typically about 5 ultrasounds maybe. They're very quick appointments. The ultrasound is, you do an ultrasound and a blood draw every time. So you're with us like 20 minutes at a time. So you can usually drop in the morning before you start your workday. So that 2 weeks of medication usually doesn't disrupt your life too much.
Got you. One unsettler sent in a question. Yay for taking care of all this. How old is too old to freeze eggs, assuming a person has a healthy premenopausal supply? Asking from my almost 43-year-old non-committal self, they said.
So the spring age cutoff to freeze eggs is 43. We will freeze embryos up until 47. And that's just because eggs are quite fragile. Embryos are hardier than eggs and they survive the freeze thaw process a little better than eggs do. And so we just don't see success rates after freezing eggs after age 43. So that's why we have that cutoff. We allow embryo freezing for a little bit longer because they tend to survive the thaw process a little bit better. That age cutoff is going to vary from clinic to clinic. So if you don't like the answer you get, you can definitely try somewhere else and everyone's going to be alone.
Will I struggle to give birth naturally after cryopreservation?
So how you perform in egg freezing has no correlation with your actual fertility. This is kind of like a completely separate process. We have no way, really importantly, we have no way of predicting someone's fertility. There's no test to predict someone's fertility. Until you go and try to get pregnant, we have no idea if you will or won't struggle. There can be things about your history that maybe are red flags where I'm like, oh, maybe you'll have trouble, maybe you won't, something like that. But I have no way to know for sure. And the way you do with egg freezing will not, freezing your eggs specifically will not affect your future fertility because the eggs we freeze are eggs that would have died off anyway. They're not eggs that would have ever been in contention or in play in the future.
It's almost like y'all are rescuing them, which is great.
Yeah, we're philanthropists.
Okay,
10K per
thank you.
cycle philanthropists.
Right? Thanks, Unsettlers, for asking your questions. Everything that you sent in across social media, the threads, the IG, the TikTok, the DMs of it all came into play here. So thank you, Dr. Reddy, for answering those. My final question for you is just a personal one. Like, why does this matter to you? Why do you do this? And how do you think this shifts the landscape of reproductive health?
Yeah, I really got into fertility medicine because I really think reproductive autonomy is so important for patients. I think choosing what your family building goals are, whether that's to have a family, not to have a family, to have kids now, later, who you reproduce with, I think all of that should absolutely be something you get to choose. And so that was always my like absolute priority when I was choosing a specialty. And then the other thing is I love that it's just like a really cutting edge part of medicine. IVF babies are like 40 years old. So this is a really new field. Egg freezing only became non-experimental in 2012. So it's all very new, very cutting edge. It's so dynamic. Things are changing. You come back in 5 years, we're going to be doing things differently. So I love that. I love that we're on the cutting edge of medicine. So I love that we get to help patients and empower them.
I love it too. Okay, Dr. Reddy, if you have even just one more minute, we have just a couple more
Go for it.
that just flooded in. Okay. Someone asked me, how long did the whole process take from start to finish, and did I have to stay in town the whole time? So from inject to retrieval, just estimate about 2 weeks, relatively like 14 days. It'll vary person to person, and both my cycles were different. Did I stay in town the whole time? No, I did not. As Dr. Reddy could tell you, first cycle, I went to LA and back, I think twice. Second cycle, I'm so bad. I shouldn't have, but I did because work. Work
Fine.
doesn't stop,
Do
y'all.
what we need to do.
I balanced it with my career. Second cycle, I went to Miami,
Hmm.
Dallas, and yeah, because Clay Thompson. I went to Miami, I went to Dallas, and then I came home, and then maybe one LA trip in there. Okay, so but yes, I recommend staying in town the whole time if you can. Don't be like me, but if you need to be like me, know that we can make it through.
That's right.
Next question. Someone said, is that $1,000 a month or $1,000 a year for storage? That's closer to $1,000 a year. Oh my God, I can speak personally. I don't have $1,000 a month for storage, so that's a year. Someone said, "Do you turn so you turn the egg into an embryo and reimplant it later? So then I would be pregnant without having sex." So we have kind of like a Virgin Mary question here of,
Mhm.
are you pregnant without sexual contact if that embryo is being reimplanted? The answer is yes
Yeah.
from Dr. Reddy. Okay,
Yes.
yes, you are. Defying gravity, science, all the things. Um, this is a quick question. What's the cost specifically associated to reimplantation to get pregnant? So
So to take the eggs and turn them into embryos, there's like a lab fee associated with it. Oh, I feel like it's maybe $14,000 ish. Um, Rough on the ish, I don't know. Heavy on the ish. And then to transfer the embryo into you is about $5,000. So 10, 14, 5, 25-ish is what I would say.
thank you. Do you offer split program? I think they mean,
Like
I
split
think
egg and embryo, probably.
yes, and that the answer is yes because I was offered that, y'all, on my first cycle. I was considering doing some as eggs, some as embryos since I was in a relationship, and ultimately I decided to just do eggs. So, yes, it is offered. And then if you're on the pill, do you stop taking it during this process? And how far in advance do you stop taking it before that 2 week period? So as mentioned, y'all, I personally had medications I was taking that I was like, this is just is getting a lot. So I decided to wait 2 to 3 months after. I just wanted to be fully clear and see what my body was doing on its own, not under the influence of any kind of chronic medications. Dr. Reddy, if they're on the birth control pill, one of the many pills, how far in advance do they have to stop taking it?
So it totally depends on the type of contraception you're on. Typically, a birth control pill I'd want out of your system for like anywhere between 1 to 3 months prior to doing this process. But if you have, say, like the Mirena IUD, that does not impact ovulation, doesn't cause cysts, nothing like that. And that can actually stay in throughout this process untouched. So it kind of just depends on what you're on.
You are the pinnacle of modern science. Thank you, Dr. Reddy, for answering those questions. Unsettlers, it's really been a fantastic journey. This is probably single-handedly the most like scientifically informative episode of the podcast that we have. We have had like other professionals on, but I mean, psychology. This is it. This is so fun. So thank you for coming. Thank you, Spring Fertility, for being in partnership. Know that you can all watch my journey. I am still posting all those little, hidden underwear cam. And when I say that, I mean the camera was sitting next to but my underwear was in a bin. Okay, anyway, all of those videos you can watch on YouTube, youtube.com/joyofphoto or youtube.com/enjoyment endeavor. You can find Dr. Reddy and Spring Fertility online. Visit Spring Fertility's website. And Spring is also giving y'all a unique offer through me. So you can get $150 off of your first consult with the code JOY150. And if you're listening to the pod, you're driving, be safe. Don't worry. Come back to the episode description or also my website, and you will find this code. You'll find a link to get started to schedule. You can also join my newsletter, joyophoto.substack.com/welcome. If you go to enjoymentendeavor.com, you can also find the link to sign up for my newsletter. I'm going to send you all of our resources here, the podcast episode so that you can watch it back, and then links so that you can schedule your first consult and just look inside your ovaries a little bit. You know what I'm saying? See if you want to get them things up on out and frozen. Because philanthropy, duh. So thank you so much for doing good for this pod, for the planet. Be sure to listen to Dating Unsettled wherever podcasts are found. And we'll see you when we see you. Bye.